last week.
Yeah, yeah.
So
This
good
is
stuff.
the Neoliberal Round
Yeah, I know we
podcast.
can't, but this is what we're talking about, guys. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Leon.
You're welcome.
Who else? Who else? Thank you, Leon. Thank you, Lily. Thank you so much. That this is the kind of discussion we need to have in this class. By the way, for those of us who are not aware, I published an article in the Jamaica Gleaner. I did share it. I shared it with the class, I believe. It's entitled Jesus. It's not an art. It's an editorial. It's an op-ed. So usually I will share a letter and then will publish, but this time I published an op-ed, which is an editorial, and it's at the front page of the Sunday Gleaner, dated Sunday, July 13th, 2025. The title of the editorial or the op-ed is Jesus Didn't Found Christianity. He Undermined Religious Elitism. Did any of you read it? Or did any of you peruse it?
No, sir. I have to go check
What?
it.
Your professor wrote an article in the Jamaican Gleaner.
Sir, normally that I would have gone to the Gleaner on a Sunday and read those kind of articles, but this Sunday, no. So I guess
you guys read it and were mad with me. I'm like, what the hell? What is Renaldo doing? I'm not even.
Well, you have to send the link, sir. Ensure that that link is on Zoom so it can go in and read it.
I write a lot. I write extremely a lot, and I'm going to send it to you. So there it is. It's in the Jamaica Gleaner. I'm thinking I don't think we have time to go over it today because I'm going to move into the group presentation that I was just talking to give you guys time to get yourself ready to present. But it is a powerful article. I'm trying to find it here. I sent it to you guys right there. Bring it back up here. Oops. Okay, there we go. It's entitled, Jesus Didn't Found Christianity, He Undermined Religious Elitism. And by the way, you guys, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read. Did you guys read, watch the lecture? The lecture is for last week and the materials for last week. I hope you guys had gotten a chance to do that. But one of the things I asked as you guys got ready to, as you got ready to watch, sometimes I might text something. It's for reflection. As you read or as you watch, you can think about it. Because when you ask yourself certain questions and then you go to the material, I find that people learn much more quickly because and it helps with memory. If you just read something and put it down, it's not as memorable. But when you approach something, a material, stimuli, okay, with a question, with a wavering mind, with a quizzical mind or something, and then you read with that focus, it will help you. It will help to situate you and it will help you to remember. Last week I had asked, as you got ready to watch, I said, when you're finished watching, then you will know how to reflect, because some of you had asked some questions. I said, when you finish watching, then you'll know how to reflect. But zero in on Caribbean theology, what it is based on, what you have gleaned, and how does it respond to our experience. And Reverend Dr. Garnet Roper, who was the original professor for this course, who developed the course and was president at JTS, pastor, and was also pastor in the missionary church. He wrote a book about Caribbean theology, and he talked about how it should respond to the issues of the day. It should speak to the experience of the Caribbean people. And of course, one of the things, if you are theologians or study theology, one of the things that you will come to understand or will explore is they'll ask you, what is your Christology? What is your Christology? In other words, what is your theology of Christ? The theology of Christ. And then they may ask you, is it transcendent? Do you have a transcendent approach or transcendent approach? Okay. Is it a top-down approach or from the bottom up? So then you ask all those questions, and then when you start reading into these things, it will help to focus your mind. But I said Jesus didn't found Christianity, he undermined religious elitism. And last week you were supposed to watch a lecture, and I said to you, Rastafari has theological roots grounded in African traditions and our experience. And there's some amount of Christian tradition is found within Rastafarianism, okay? Because it's, in a sense, it's a bit hybrid, but what it is not devoid of its African roots, and it will not bastardize its African experience into something else. Christianity, on the other hand, has African influences. However, it will not tell you that it is African. Okay, it will not tell you that it has bastardized or baptized or bastardized anything African. Anything it has taken from Africa has been wiped clean to make it look as if it were not African at all. Rastafarians have not done that. They have created a religion that where they will tell you that this is from the Bible, or they will tell you that this is from Africa. But within the Christian experience, nothing is African. Okay? Nothing is African within the Christian experience, or they will not tell you that. But Rastafari has theological roots grounded in African traditions and our experience. What if Christianity or revivalism? On the other, moving further, Caribbean theology should not be Christian theology. Caribbean theology should not be Christian theology. And if you read Garnet Roper's book, it will help you with this question. Now, the question is that fair to say? Is it fair to say that Caribbean theology should not be Christian theology? The final class, I will answer this question. The final class, because I will ask you, should theology transcend culture? Should theology transcend culture? Now, because Christian theology is Eurocentric, so Caribbean theology within the post-colonial must come to terms with that. And remember, post-colonialism does not suggest the end of colonialism, but post-colonialism suggests that colonization still exists, but in a new form. But what post-colonialism does, it looks at the lingering effects of colonization. Say, for example, the issue of colorism and the use of bleaching cream, where some persons who were affected by colonization still today are invested in certain creams to make themselves look like the other, like what they were taught was better than themselves. And there are people who would look at people like Vibes Cartel and people like who are exposed in those ways, who bleach their skin, and some people would look, and even some religious figures, some Christian, then would look down on them and say, "Oh, wow, why are they bleaching their skin?" But how different is that from the bleaching, the other kind of bleaching that takes place, where persons would bleach their culture, bleach their spiritual traditions, seeing it as evil, seeing and taking on ideas from the other, okay, about it, and even making it a cultural defense for why something should not be embraced, still taken from the other. So you can bleach your skin, which is one of the effects of colonization. Post-colonialism looks at the lingering effects, the socio-political, historical effects of colonization, the damage done to the African, okay, and where that African is today, or the damage done to the Indian, or the damage done to the indentured laborer from China, and where he is today, and what he is doing. Some go as far as bleaching the skin. Some go as far as disdaining their intellect, their spirituality, and their spirituality, or historical spirituality. So again, so there are those who look down, who look at the person who is bleaching their skin as one of the effects of the damage done to the black man or to the black and brown man, where he thinks that he must cleanse his skin so that it looks white, while there are those on the other side, the African, who believe he must cleanse his spirituality so that he becomes like the other. So you can either you will either bleach your color, you will either change your color, or you will either change your spirituality or your traditions. Of course, that's one way of looking at it. Now, Jesus didn't found Christianity. He undermined religious elitism. And in the article I said, when most people think of Jesus, they picture him as the founder of Christianity, a teacher sent to save sinners from hell and to establish a new religion. But this might be a misreading of both his mission and his message. What if Jesus didn't come to start a new faith tradition at all? What if instead his mission was to expand an existing one, specifically to open up the privileges of Jewish spiritual life to those outside the bloodline? Because you see, Jesus was a Jew, teaching within a Jewish context. His teachings were about abandoning the covenant. His teachings were not about abandoning the covenant, but broadening it. His most radical claim wasn't, I am the Messiah, but rather, you belong to. So, through Jesus, Gentiles who are outsiders could be brought into the Jewish household, not by ancestry, but by faith. So now they are now part of the Jewish family. They are now considered Jews or Jewish. That's the idea, and that was what the scribes and the Sadducees and the Pharisees and all the fathers of the faith and of the culture, the fathers of the culture had challenged and contested Jesus about. He contested them to say, how are you allowing these people to come to our house and to be part of us, as if and Jesus was saying, well, yeah, they're part of me because they follow me and they believe on me, and if they're believing me and we're friends, then we're one. He was creating a new system. It was revolutionary. It was different. This was more than inclusivity. It was a profound challenge to the deeply held belief that access to God was tribal. Yes, access to God was tribal. Again, access to God was tribal. So the Jews had their God, yes? And all these cultures had their gods. In Africa, oh yes, they had their religion. India, they have their Hindu. In China, they have the Eastern religion. But Jesus came along, and within Jerusalem, the Gentiles in those areas, they were excluded. They weren't part of this culture. They weren't part of this family. And Jesus wanted them to, and he believed in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This was more than inclusivity, though. It was a profound challenge to the deeply held belief that access to God was tribal, inherited, or culturally locked. So Jesus preached that the unclean, the unlearned, and even the unloved could become chosen by relationship rather than spiritual. That was Jesus talking to his friends, telling them that, hey, you can be it's like Renaldo was, but now we talk about the issue of marriage. Renaldo is saying you can become part of the McKenzie family. That's ludicrous. No, you have to be born into the McKenzie family. In order to get the inheritance, in order to get our land and our and stuff, you can't get that. But here comes Renaldo saying, no, if you love me and believe in me and you do what I do, you don't have to be circumcised. You don't have to cut, you don't have to be circumcised or born. So you once you believe in me and we're brothers and we hang out together, we do stuff together, we love one another, then guess what? My family is now your family, now we are one. And now the parents were mad. So to the religious authorities of the time, this was outrageous. Men like Peter and John, fishermen without education or pedigree, were now claiming access to God's blessing, as were tax collectors, Samaritans, and Roman centurions. Let me say this again. This was more than inclusivity. It was a profound challenge to the deeply held belief that access to God was tribal, inherited, or culturally locked. Jesus preached that the unclean, the unlearned, and even the unloved could become chosen by relationship rather than ritual. By relationship rather than by ritual. So to the religious authorities of the time, this was outrageous. Men like Peter and John, fishermen without education or pedigree, were now claiming access to God's blessings, as were tax collectors, Samaritans, and Roman centurions. So it wasn't just heretical, it was destabilizing. It threatened, again, it wasn't just heretical, it was destabilizing. It threatened, what Jesus did threatened the social and theological order. It threatened the social and theological order. So Jesus was condemned and killed, not just for who he claimed to be, but for the people he dared to include. The people he dared to include. The people he dared to include. Who are people including today? Anyways, he didn't try to abolish Judaism. He tried to universalize its embrace. He didn't try to abolish Judaism. Jesus didn't try to do that. That was not Jesus's goal. What he tried to do was to universalize its embrace, to bring more people part of the Jewish household or the family, so that more people can be part of the culture. More of us can be part of their inheritance. So yes, yet history took a turn Jesus may never have intended. And I said to somebody recently, history is for the future. Okay, men move in the now, but they make sense of it in the future. So history took a turn Jesus may never have intended. As his followers faced rejection from Jewish communities, they created a new identity. Let me say that again. Yet history took a turn Jesus may never have intended. As his followers faced rejection from Jewish communities, they created a new identity. Baptism replaced circumcision. Fellowship replaced synagogue. And thus, Christianity was born, not so much as a new religion, but as a refuge for spiritual outsiders. Over time, this new faith made the same mistake Jesus came to correct. It created its own walls, doctrines, and boundaries of belonging. Today, many Christians still see themselves as grafted into the tree of Israel, claiming inheritance through faith in Jesus. Again, today, many Christians in the Caribbean and the world, let's say for Caribbean thought, many Christians in Jamaica still see themselves as grafted into the tree of Israel, claiming inheritance through faith in Jesus. Meanwhile, many Jewish communities reject this claim, and the house remains divided. The result is centuries of tension, built on a shared origin, but a fractured identity. The people. So here's the deeper question. Here's the deeper question. Must one become a Jew or a Christian to be blessed by God? Is divine love tribal or is it universal? Again, here is the deeper question for reflection. Must one become a Jew or a Christian? Or a Muslim, or an African, or an Obeah to be blessed by God? Is divine love, and remember we say that God is what? God is than that which nothing greater can be conceived or imagined. God is unlimited. It is we who are limited. We in our limitations make sense of the limitless possibilities. Yet God in his universality, yes, and has sought it well to accept. We are just ants. But if you look at this ants trying to make sense, but I'll accept it because he doesn't know. Yes? It is man who makes sense of the other man's worship as unto God, as if that man is God. Yet God is looking down. Anyways, today many Christians still see themselves as grafted into the tree of life, claiming inheritance through faith in Jesus. Meanwhile, many Jewish communities reject this claim, and the house remains divided. So here's the deeper question. Must one become a Jew or a Christian to be blessed by God? God, we say, is, again, God is unlimited. We are limited. We, in our limitations, make sense of the limitless possibilities of life. Remember that. Yes? We are limited. God is unlimited. God is more than we can ever ask. Sorry, God is than that we can ever ask or imagine, that we can ever conceive of. So is divine love tribal or is it universal? Jesus didn't seem interested in that kind of gatekeeping. Jesus didn't. Let me say this again. Is divine love tribal or is it universal? Jesus didn't seem interested in that kind of gatekeeping. What is it to gatekeep? You know, the insurance companies, they gatekeep. Certain companies, they gatekeep, like who can come in, who they can let in. And people form associations and groups and stuff and unions and stuff to prevent other people from coming in, so as to protect the purity of their thing and to protect the benefits that their people receive over the others. You know, that the competitiveness, we talk about earlier we were talking about the African who is not competitive, but that competitive spirit has been inherited. Our independence, when we got independence and our freedom, we took on Eurocentric ideology, we took on Eurocentric behavior, that competitive nature that put us at. We talked about that. We talked about Burkina Faso and how those women are able to come out in a communal way and work, and then as against a dependent capitalist culture where everything you have to pay a man something in order to get things done. Okay, that's the kind of competitive nature that defies the post-industrial, as against what had defined the global north, the global south, the developed, the black and brown man who comes from Africa. And his attitude, you see, his behavior, his culture, who he is, has been, because he's been divorced from his spirituality. Because you see, what it is to be spiritual, there is no difference between the African spirituality and his person. The spirituality and the person, there's no difference between the two. Jesus didn't seem interested in that kind of gatekeeping. He offered something far more radical than religion. He offered relationship, a kinship that defied bloodline and status. His vision was not of religious dominance. And just so you know, Ignatius gave the Church a Roman identity so as to raise the church's status in the first 100 years of Christianity. For those of us who don't study church history, the first 100. Church, raise the church's status. And please remember that the religious groups were competing for dominance of the day. And so Ignatius thought it quite a brilliant idea to give the church, to structure the church, give it a Roman identity, a Roman structure. And if he does that, maybe it will raise the status of the church and make it more dominant than the other religious groups. But anyways, Jesus offered relationship though. He wasn't about creating institution. He offered relationship, a kinship that defied bloodline and status. His vision was not of religious dominance, but of spiritual belonging. His spiritual belonging. Because these people didn't belong anywhere. And Jesus, who was a Jew, wanted, no. We have to bring these people. Why is it only for us? Let's share our family, our culture with. And Jesus was defiant about that. He offered relationship, a kinship that defied bloodline and status. His vision was not of religious dominance, but of spiritual belonging. His revolution wasn't in doctrine. His revolution was not in doctrine, but in the destruction of spiritual elitism. And that's what has happened in the world today, in some of these countries, post-colonial countries, where they create an elite class, an elite group of people who act as the house slaves or the whippers who would whip the others. And yes, anyways, I won't get into that right now. Ironically, by institutionalizing Christ's message, the early church may have missed it. Perhaps the true gospel is not about escaping hell or earning heaven. It's about dismantling the idea that anyone is spiritually superior to anyone else. Perhaps the true gospel is not about escaping hell or earning heaven. It's about dismantling the idea that anyone is spiritually superior to anyone else. It's about creating space for the stranger to become family, not by erasing identity, but by expanding it. In the end, Jesus didn't come to build a church. He came to break open a household. That article is available in the Jamaica Gleaner. And the last class we're going to talk about two things. One, should theology transcend culture? That's one. Yet people will say, well, it is within the bowels of culture that we develop theological reflections. Yet we might say that it is many cultures today had branched, morphed into religious institution over time. We can talk about that later on. The last class we talk about that, which is 2 classes from today. All right, guys, we will now begin. We will have 3 groups. We will have 4 groups present today, or 3 groups present today. And so we will now pause from this because we were following this from last week's class. Today we will